Hello, and welcome to the Thoughtful Realtor Podcast. I'm Cliff Tsang.
And I'm Kenny Gong.
And I'm Connie Chung.
And we're the founders and partners of Willamar Real Estate. This is a show for those interested and invested in the world of residential real estate. Every episode, we sit down for insights, stories, and conversations about all things in the real estate market today, running a real estate team in California, and finding our way as leaders and business partners. Today's episode, we're talking about our past selves.
Ooh.
We're diving into the topic of what would you say to yourself or your younger self, and what advice and tutelage and guidance would you give to that younger Cliff or younger Kenny or younger Connie? What would you say to that person if they appeared in front of you today?
Let's start with you, Kenny. What was young Kenny like?
Young Kenny was, you know what? I would tell my younger self to allow yourself to dream and allow yourself to try new things and allow yourself just to do things that felt joyous and different and new. And even if it felt challenging, to just go ahead and try. And I think that was because I felt so much insecurity when I was younger about failing. And there wasn't as much conversation about failing fast and like, you gotta fail. Like that just wasn't as prevalent as it is now. And so I wish it was, because I think it's totally true. Failing fast and failing as many times as you can is a really, really good thing. And I would try new things. And so there were moments that I feel very proud of myself as a younger person, because
In hindsight or at the time?
In hindsight, because I did dream and I did try new things. So I had always grown up wanting to be somehow involved in food. I loved cooking shows. I spent all of my Saturday nights or Saturday mornings watching cooking shows on PBS. And I always just wanted to be around food. And it wasn't until I was in my mid-20s when I just said, I'm just going to do it. And so I became a baker, and it started out at a pie shop. I would roll so much dough, and I would make these huge balls of dough. I mean, like, they were...
How big are we talking about?
We're talking about like 25 pounds.
Is this shout out to Three Babes too?
Shout out to Three Babes. And shout out to Anytown. I was on their baking production team for a few months. And even though it didn't work out and I was only doing it for a few months, it really became a pivotal moment in my life. And it demonstrated that there can be so much joy in just giving yourself permission to dream and try new things. And so I would say to my younger self, do that more. And it'll be okay if you try new things and it doesn't work out. That's totally fine. Just try it and then you'll know.
I love that. Yeah. It's funny because it's cliche, but it's just so true. And I also sometimes think maybe in this conversation, it's funny because I think some of the things that we're going to share to our younger selves when we were maybe in our 20s or earlier, it's still applicable. Like it'll be applicable to our current selves because we are a younger version of our future selves. Kind of crazy to think about.
Cliff, what about you?
I was really excited for this episode because I knew that we would all have very different perspectives and different snippets to share, and really just good insights to share as well. So mine, one of them was to work hard, and really hard, and to not be afraid to work. And I guess where that comes from for me is I know that there's a lot of talk about work-life balance, and for me, I think in my 20s, I didn't really know what I wanted. And I think if you think that work and career gives folks joy and meaning in lives, I think a large part of that can only be found by trying things and working really hard. And I think when I look back at my 20s, I feel like I worked hard and I don't really have any, not many regrets about that. And I think if I could go back to my younger self, I would, because I think at the time I had questions of, am I working too hard? What is this all for? And in hindsight, it's like there was a meaning for all that. And I am glad that I worked hard. And it kind of laid the foundation for future self, I guess, present day Cliff. So that's one thing that I would share. What about you, Con?
Similarly in the lines of working hard, dreaming big, the first thought came to mind was, okay, I'm talking to my 9-10-year-old self, and I would say to fail as much as you can, and that failure is part of the process and the success. And this came to mind because I was trying to teach Mia recently to roller skate, and the first thing I said to her was, because she was so afraid of falling and very hesitant, and I said, no, you want to fall as much as you can. And plus she had all the gear of all her knee pads, shoulder pads, all these pads, not shoulder pads, but she might as well have. And I thought, wow, as a kid, you're so afraid of falling, but no, it's because the more times you fall, you get back up, and that's what teaches you to be brave and to not, that it's not going to be so bad, because you'll just keep getting up. You'll learn to have grit and to persevere and just to keep on going. And I know as a kid, and even to this day, I think I associate so much of, okay, I don't want to do it unless it's going to be perfect. But no, you got to mess up, you got to fail, and you'll just get right back up. And the more you do it as a kid, I hope that it becomes second nature to know it's okay to try new things, because I might not get it right the first time, and it's okay. And so another part of that kind of fail as much as you can to normalize the failure, because I think for me, I associate a lot of failure with, okay, what are people going to think of me? But if my younger self knew, that's normal, who cares what other people think, then I would hope that what other people think matters less.
Yeah. And also failing, it gets hard. Does it get harder to fail as an adult? Like the older we get, it feels like it's because the stakes
are higher.
The stakes are higher. And it also feels like the older that you get, like you're not supposed to fail, right? Like there's this thing of like, you're supposed to know how to do things.
Older, wiser. You should know how to do things.
Yeah, you're younger. You break a bone. That bone will grow back. When you're older, you break something. Who knows if it's going to come back.
But that's also the wonderful thing about so many of these fails, or so many of these trying new things that aren't necessarily, they could be physical, but there are a lot of times they're just mental, right? Like, how do you try things out emotionally, that whether it's in your relationships, whether it's in how you show up for the world, those are all things that I think are also really, really important to try out, to work your way through.
The thing that I have a hard time wrapping my head around is, it's interesting because when you observe someone else fail or try hard and not succeed, I typically, associate really positive words with that person: perseverance, grit. You have a lot of admiration for it. But it's ironic that when it's for yourself, you're super self-conscious, and it's hard to break through that. Even when it's turned around, you actually appreciate seeing that in other people. It's such a weird mind paradox, or just so confusing how the mind works like that. I'm sure there's like a evolutionary reason for that, or but it's just weird to think through.
Yeah, like we put ourselves down for failing,
but others
lift them up. Yeah, that's so true.
There's that saying of, treat yourself how you would treat your friend. And if your friend told you a story of, oh, I did this, I messed up, and you're like, well, at least you gave it a try.
Yeah, that's so true.
It's hard to give ourselves that grace sometimes.
Yeah.
Any other tips that we want to go around and share?
Yeah.
Con, sounds like you have one.
Cliff.
All right. Here's my next one. So I guess maybe more practical advice coming from me. I if I could go back in time, to my younger self, and these are words that I wish I heed from, my grandmother, my parents had always kind of nudged me, kind of elbowed me and said, hey, you should be thinking about this more, which is to invest early.
Oh.
Surprise that I would be talking a little bit about investing on this podcast.
Add that to my list.
But the fun, okay, pop quiz maybe for the audience and also for Connie and Kenny. I always love talking about this example, which is, if you had a penny on day 1 and it doubled every single day, by day 30, how much would it be worth? So day 1, 1 penny. Day 2, it's 2 cents. Day 3, it's 4 cents. Day 4, it's 8 cents. Until you get to day 30. Any thoughts
I just know that's compounding. Is it $30?
No.
Okay, $30.
I think it's like $700.
Oh.
$700. Okay. The answer, it is really shocking. On day 30, it's $5 million.
What?
It's
Wait,
astonishing.
30? Oh.
Yeah, on day 30. Because it just keeps compounding. And really the moral of it is kind of like the human brain can't fathom compounding. It is just like our brains can't even calculate it. And the funny thing about that is when you look at a grid, it's like you really only start to see some really large sums of money until like day 28.
Oh, that's right.
29. Days. If a month only had 20 days, it'd be like, oh, that's not that much. I think it'd be like $5,000.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that people always share is like Warren Buffett. He's like considered the greatest investor of all time, one of the richest men. It's 90% of his wealth was generated after he turned 65. So if he retired when he was 65, like most people do, probably there's a chance that Warren Buffett wouldn't be a household name. We wouldn't even know who this person is. So a long way of saying, if I could go back in time, I wish I had known of these stories. And I actually didn't really think about it. But even socking away a little bit in your 20s can really make a big difference. And you don't need to adjust your lifestyle dramatically, but just having that mindset of how can I invest and put away a little bit more. It was just not on my radar 10, 15 years ago.
10, 15 years of lost investment.
Yeah.
So I think that to me is similar in the way that the tiny steps that you make along the way can have big impact. And whether it's investing or in getting a project done, every single thing that needs any single goal that we have or any single project that we have can be accomplished by moving the needle one tiny fraction, incremental step after another. And I think that's the biggest lesson, because it reminds me that things don't happen necessarily in life through huge action or huge steps. A lot of times sometimes it does require a leap of faith, like an initial leap of faith, but moving towards actually creating something bigger, more impactful, more significant is often through tiny, tiny little steps. And there was a very random example that I have, which was at the beginning of 2022, I had a goal of organizing all of my papers. So, as business owners, as real estate agents, we deal with a lot of paper, especially once you're starting a company. There's just a lot of documentation about everything. There's statements of everything and forms that you have to fill. And I've been so bad that I've been putting everything into a cardboard box for 2022 that is labeled papers.
Not even 2022.
Just papers. That's all it says. Papers. And my goal at the beginning of 2022 was to organize all those papers. And it felt like the more time passed, the more papers went into this giant heap of a pile, and it became so overwhelming that I had no clue what to do with it. Like it was so daunting. But this past winter, when we had a little bit of time, I just said to myself, like, just take out one piece of paper and figure out what to do with it. And then take out another piece of paper and figure out what to do with it. And so we had a break. I got some file folders, and I just started taking each single piece of paper and dealing with that one single piece of paper at a time and figuring out where it needs to go, and then organizing it, and kind of then categories started to shape and an organization system started to form. And it's still not fully, there. It's still not fully organized, but it's much more organized than it was. And it just required me to literally take out a single piece of paper at a time. Yeah. And now I do not have a cardboard box.
It's cleared.
It's cleared. And of course, because in my head, it was this gargantuan task. But when I started to take it, piece by piece, paper by paper, I mean, I organized that thing in like a day. You know what I mean? 2 days, whatever it was. But just that mentality shift of like, it's not this overwhelming thing. You can just do things step by step was really impactful. So these are lessons that I'm learning in real time.
When you paused there, I wasn't sure where you're going with it. A day is quick, or 2 days is quick. I thought you were going to be like, I organized it in a month or
Oh,
something.
no. It was fast.
Yeah. Well, I bet even just telling yourself, okay, I'm just going to do one piece of paper, but that you're doing that one spirals into, okay, well, I might as well do the next 3, and 4, 5,
exactly.
and then you're halfway through.
Yep. Connie?
Another thought I would tell my younger self is everyone is just as insecure as you are and has their own SHIT that they're dealing with, especially when it comes to family, or that there are just family dynamics that everyone is navigating. I remember growing up, I come from a big family. There's 6 kids, and just always thinking my family was crazy.
Yep.
And not talking about it. And it wasn't until I got older, maybe college, that I shared more about my family dynamics to friends and realized, wow, okay, everyone has some, relative that is a little off or drama, and that's also normal. But growing up, it was not normalized. I thought I had to be this perfect person from a perfect family. And so now, my younger self, I would say it's okay to talk about it. Everyone has a dysfunctional family. That's why the dysfunctional family shows today are so great, because I don't think we had that growing up. And it just normalizes everything and it's a reminder that everyone is dealing with their own thing in their head, and that's normal. I think what helps is talking about it, sharing with others to know you're not alone, and same with family dynamics. And
everyone's got insecurities.
Everyone's got an insecurity.
Yeah.
And so once you acknowledge and accept that, you can move on with your life and do the thing you want to do, or talk to the person you want to talk to, or show up however you want to show up. That puts away that mental weight that you're carrying.
You can let it go.
Yeah. Any others? Cliff?
Oh, Cliff.
You want to share one last one?
Oh, yeah, I have one last one. Actually, maybe I'll share 2 quick ones, because I had an adjustment. So one, I recently heard this, which I thought was kind of insightful. It's, if you're rushing to somewhere, it implies that you think you're not going to get there on time, because otherwise you wouldn't be rushing. And I was like, I think that's true. I need to think about this a little bit more, but I think that makes sense, because the act of rushing, shout out to Jason Drees, who mentioned this. And so that's one. I think I feel like in my 20s, and still to this day, I feel like I'm rushing to get to a destination. And I think it comes from a place of insecurity, of thinking I need to get there faster because, and I don't know what that because is, but it definitely prevents me from being more present, cliche, stopping to smell the roses and all of that. But there's an element of rush in my life that I'm trying to quell.
Ooh, I can relate to that. Is it a reminder to enjoy the journey in addition to the destination for you?
Yeah. That's all wrapped up into it as well. So, and then the second one is just the Tony Robbins quote that I've tried to really take to heart over the last couple of years, which is proximity is power. You hear him say that a lot. Proximity is power. The people that you surround yourself with, the energy that you surround yourself with, that being close, mentally, physically close to mostly people of what you're trying to achieve will help you get there. There's kind of the joke, the adage of like, hey, if you want to get a 6-pack, if that's your goal, well, the best way is to hang out with 5 people with the 6-pack. Or hey, if you're trying to lose 10 pounds or whatever the goal is, if you want to, do X, Y, Z, hang out around 5 people who are doing that, and slowly their habits will kind of ingrain into how you act in your daily life. And so that's something that I'm trying to take to heart. And I wish I knew in my 20s, because I don't think I thought about it in that sense. I always thought, hey, I need to, on my own, willpower through X, Y, Z and get there on my own, versus think, how can I actually have a group that supports me for whatever endeavor it is in your life.
It's interesting to think about how surrounding yourself with people who are doing the things that you want to do normalizes those behaviors.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's the most important part, because if you're doing something that feels different or contrary to the people around you, it's inherently going to feel a little bit more uncomfortable and even more like you're going to feel less motivation to stick with it because it feels so different than what everyone else around you is doing.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have people that are doing all of that same thing, or like building all of those same habits, or have established already those same habits, then
you'll feel weird if you're not doing it.
Exactly.
Almost, right? So then you'll That's a great point.
Yeah, I love that. I would add to that because it's a good reminder for myself. So many of these tips are good practice for today's living.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say to feel qualified to be in that group or to feel worthy, because so many times I will get emails asking for help or, to chat. And I'm always like, oh, of course, willing to share my knowledge. But then I'm scared to ask, people I aspire to be like or learn from, because I'll think that, oh, they're too good for me. So,
yeah, I think the corollary or the other additional layer is, I feel like there's a quote that's like, if you're the smartest person in the room, go to a different room. And I think that also really plays well with this, right? Because what you're also trying to do is reach beyond where you currently are.
Yeah.
And so it's almost like, the average, you are the average of the 5 people around you. So it's similar to the proximity is power. And so it's almost like, you want to make sure that there's always someone who's doing better than you or is more skillful than you are. And then also people who are less skillful than you are, that you can help kind of bring up as well. And making sure that, that really, really drives how you show up for life and how you surround yourselves with certain kind of people.
Yeah, such great lessons. I'm taking note.
Ooh, I have one that is let go. In addition to letting go, it's moving on as quickly as possible. Because I think I have spent so much of my life overthinking and spiraling and worrying, and it has prevented me from moving forward and doing things that I want to do, because I was just thinking about things so much, worrying. I just worried so much, and worrying takes time. Worrying takes energy.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's something that I would really, really say is, as much as you can, move on as quickly as possible. In so many ways,
That's a great one. All such great tips.
Do you want to close it out?
Sure. And that's it for this episode of The Thoughtful Realtor. You can find us on Instagram at willowmar__ or willowmar.com. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and leave us a review. We really do read each of your comments, so please share the love, share with friends, family, anyone who might enjoy this episode. And we'd love to also hear your comments on what are some of your tips or guidance that you'd give to your younger self. Feel free to comment below, and let's keep this dialogue going. For the Thoughtful Realtor Podcast, I'm Cliff Tsang.
I'm Kenny Gong.
And I'm Connie Chung. Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.